Hello, and welcome to another Andrew Joseph PR curated At Home with Joseph series. We've had an excellent journey with Joseph on many various topics, and today we're all about Christmas cookies. And I have to say, I hope that you are doing well, that you are being healthy and successful, and very much looking forward to our upcoming holiday break. Thank you for tuning in and have a wonderful day.
Making Christmas cookies is such an iconic thing for Americans. I don't know many families that don't make one or two of their favorite Christmas cookies every year. So today I'm going to share three of my favorite Christmas cookies with you. Two that are actually from my childhood, the candy cane cookie and the gingerbread man. And the third one is a variation on a very old German recipe called a Springerle. It's a very basic dough that doesn't have any fat included into it, that is rolled out and made with an impression of either a rolling pin or a wood block. And typically that dough is left to be dried out for 24 hours. I'm going to be giving you a recipe that's a variation on that doesn't take so long to cook, and it does have a little bit of butter in it. So it's a little bit softer of a cookie. So without further ado, let's get to making our dough. So the first dough we're going to work on today is the Springerle. And I want to do this first because this is going to take a couple of hours in the refrigerator to refrigerate before we actually roll out the dough. A Springerle is made using either wooden molds that depict some type of an old scene, or you can use these more modern rolling pins that are carved out with different shapes. So this is the one we're going to use to roll out our dough and then make the impressions into. And once it's baked, you will see this type of a relief pattern right on the top of the cookie, which then can just be left plain or glazed. So the next dough we're going to do is a cookie that I have been eating since I was a young kid, a candy cane cookie. It's a recipe that my mother made every year. It was part of our rotation of Christmas cookies. And it's just a basic butter dough, but it also uses Crisco in it to give it a little bit of flakiness in the cookie. And then you add some red food coloring to half of it, and you twist it into candy cane shapes, and you bake it like that. Many of you may have seen these cookies. They are a pretty common cookie found at Christmas time. So to start with, to one stick of butter, we're going to add half a cup of Crisco. And we want to beat that until it's really combined really well. With that well blended, we're going to add our confectionery sugar. And here's a little tip for you, because when you're working with confectionery sugar, it's so fine, the minute you turn on the machine, powder is going to go everywhere. And this sometimes is the same thing for flour as well. So start your mixture on a very low speed in your mixer, but just cover it with a towel, and that will hold in any of the dust. And then once it's combined, you can take that off and turn the speed up a little bit. Again, this is the same process. We're adding the sugar to the fat, so we want to make sure that this is creamed really well. You'll notice a commonality with all of these doughs really is that you're creaming the fat, you're adding the sugar, you're combining in the egg, which really is the leavener for the cookie, and then you're slowly adding in the dry ingredients, which is the flour, the salt, any baking soda or baking powder, any herbs or spices that you're putting into it. But that is a common technique for making cookies. So again, you can see how nice and creamy the fat is with the sugar in it. So our third cookie dough that we're going to do is my absolute favorite. These are gingerbread men. They're very traditional gingerbread men. And I've been eating these ever since I was a kid. I love to give these as gifts. They make a really nice handmade little gift for Christmas to give out to people. And because I'm not super fussy when it comes to decorating cookies, I don't like cookies that are overly decorated. These do not have icing or anything like that on them. I simply like to use these little silver dredges to create some buttons on the gingerbread men, which really is super cute, and you can tie a little bit of ribbon around their neck to make a little scarf if you're giving it away as a gift or anything. This dough, as good as it is a little bit more labor intensive, but it's well worth doing it. The reason that I say that is because once you get the initial ingredients mixed up, this recipe has an additional 5 to 6 cups of flour that you've got to add to it. So it starts to become really hard to work the dough. And a lot of times, if you have a small mixer, it just becomes cumbersome and it starts overflowing. So I like to keep a separate large bowl on hand that I can pour the dough mixture out into and just continue to work it with my hands until it's fully mixed. So you can see in the bowl, it gets very sticky. So we want to get all of that out. I'm going to dust a little bit of flour on my hands. And I don't think I'm going to add any more flour to this. It's a little bit sticky, but it's nice and firm. So I'm just going to cut this into 2 discs, dust it with some flour, wrap it in some parchment, and let that rest in the refrigerator before using it. Again, I like to work with a cold cookie dough when I'm cutting these out. I find it to be much easier to work with rather than a dough that's just been mixed. So these are just going to get wrapped in parchment. They're going to get put in the refrigerator. Probably refrigerate them for about an hour or 2 until they're cold. And then we will roll these out and we will stamp them with the gingerbread cookie cutters. So now we're ready to start making our cookies. And I'm going to start with the candy cane cookie. The nice thing about this cookie is that you don't actually have to roll the dough out. You're just going to take pieces of each color and you're going to roll them out between your hands like this. If you find that it gets a little sticky, just put some flour in your hands. But you want to make a nice even roll, almost like you're making a peppermint stick. And you do the same with the white, making it the same, relatively the same thickness, the same length. And if you find a piece that's too long, just cut the end off so that they are even. Put it back in your pile. And working while it's on the board, you're going to twist the cookies. It's much harder to do this if you lift up the dough and put this in your hand. So I work with everything right on the countertop. I give the ends a little bit of a pinch just to push those 2 doughs together. And if it's a little sticky, put some flour in it. Work on your countertop. Try not to work with the dough in your hand, but rather on the countertop. And again, slowly and gently roll the dough into a candy cane. So we have our candy canes that are rolled, and we're going to put these in the oven at 375 for about 9 minutes. And while they're in the oven baking, we're going to get started rolling out our gingerbread. Look how beautiful that dough is. So we're going to, on a lightly floured surface, we're just going to roll this out. We don't want to put too much flour on the gingerbread because it's already a stiff dough. But we do want to get it nice and flat. Always roll your dough from the middle out. In order to get a nice even dough, keep turning it a quarter of a turn every time. You want these to be about 1/4 of an inch thick. And this dough should not be sticky at all. If it is sticky, you did not add enough of the flour when you were making it. I always feel for the thickness to see if there's any parts that might be a little bit higher. You want these to be very even when they're cut out in the cookie molds. That feels pretty good. You want to just brush off any excess flour on the top because you don't want the flour to bake into the cookie. And I am just using a 7-inch copper cookie cutter in the shape of a gingerbread man. And I'm going to just go around and cut out the shapes. They should come out relatively easy right in your hand without breaking. Just be very gentle with prying them out. Stack them on our sheet tray. Like such. We're just going to we're going to rotate the cutter so that we can make the most use out of this dough. You want to try to roll the dough out as little as possible. But once all these shapes are cut, you can ball up the dough, re-roll it out, and go ahead and punch out some more. So these are silver dragées. They're just little candied silver balls that you can decorate cakes or cookies with. And I like to make little buttons on my gingerbread man with these. Just 3 or 4 down the middle of the body. Makes it a really cute little presentation. Not very fussy, not a lot to do, but I think it still gets the impact over for anybody who sees them. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to press all of these into cookies, and then we're going to bake them. And the last dough that we're going to roll out is the Springerly cookies. And you want to give this a nice floured surface to work on. You don't want anything to be sticky, including your hands. And you also want to really flour your rolling pin. This should be really floured in all of the grooves, and all of the little cutout places. And then you're going to give it a really good knockout so that it's not stuck full of flour, but that the flour is actually coating all of the grooves so that the dough doesn't stick in there. Very gently roll out the dough. But you want to make sure that the dough nice and smooth, it doesn't have any cracks in it, and probably about 1/8 of an inch thick. And starting at the bottom of your dough, so not on top of the dough, but at the bottom of the dough, you want to, with a pretty good force, slowly roll up your dough. And you want to go slow enough that it doesn't stick into the pin. You can see all of the beautiful shapes that the rolling pin makes. So there's going to be some uneven ends, and we're going to trim those off. And so these cookies are ready to go into the oven. They're going to go in for 375 for about 8 to 10 minutes. So we have finished our cookies for the season, and we've got them beautifully displayed here for company that should normally be coming over that are not this year. But if we were having company over, this is how we would display our Christmas cookies and invite some friends over for some cocktails and hors d'oeuvre and some Christmas cookies. I have to show off this cookie because this was the one that Tony did, which is my favorite. So when we were doing the silver dragees, I told him to do 3 little dots for the buttons, and of course he had to be creative and do his own little. So he's gonna. That's a good gingerbread. Anyway, thank you for joining me. We will see you at the Q&A. And of course, remember, you can always follow me on At Home with Joseph on Instagram and also on YouTube at Home with Joseph.
Hi, everybody. Thanks again for joining this week. As usual, if you have got any questions, please type them in the box. And thanks again for joining us. I do have a lot of fun when I make Christmas cookies, even though it is a lot of work. It's definitely well worth doing it. Even if you have 1 or 2 favorite recipes that you'd like to do, you know, get in the kitchen and make some cookies. And if you're not going to eat them all, hand them out to your neighbors. It's a really nice gesture during the holidays just to give out cookies. So we're going to go over to some of the questions that we have. Let's see. What if you don't own a KitchenAid? What do you recommend? If you don't have a KitchenAid, any type of mixer will work, whether it's a stand mixer or just a handheld mixer, but one with 2 beaters on it, that's a handheld one, that works just as fine. If you don't have any mixers, you can use a spoon. Just make sure you're mixing everything thoroughly, and then at the end of the process, when the dough is coming together, you can just knead it by hand. Let's see, what do you put on your cookie sheet so the cookies don't stick? I use Silpats. It's a silicone mat that you can, it's easy to wash, it's easy to clean, it can go in the dishwasher, but they have little strands of metal in them, and they're silicone, so nothing sticks to them. So I use them anytime I, you know, bake cookies or any type of a pastry thing. But if you don't have a Silpat, you can also use parchment paper or even a non-stick type of a foil on your pan. How long will the gingerbread cookies last? They last a long time. And usually when I make my Christmas cookies, because I want them to stay fresh and moist, I'll keep them covered in either a Tupperware or a Ziploc bag, and I will add either a half or a whole piece of white bread to them. So go to the grocery store, get a small loaf of white bread, and that will actually keep the moisture in the bag where your cookies are held so that your cookies stay moist. And as the bread starts to stale, just keep replacing it with another piece of bread. What are the spices in the gingerbread? So I use cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, allspice, and cardamom. You can use a whole range of spices in them. Oh, I also use ginger in them because it's gingerbread. You don't have to add all of those. I just like how spicy and nutty that really gives the gingerbread flavor. Can you freeze the gingerbread? Yes, you can. You can freeze them after they've been baked in a Ziploc bag. You can also freeze the dough. You can make the dough, cut it into different portions and freeze it so that you can bake off small batches and then take it out the week after and bake off another batch if you want to. If you were to use a frosting on the gingerbread cookies, what do you recommend for an icing? Typically, it really depends on what you want to achieve with doing it. You can use just a general type of a glaze, which is just a confectionery sugar with some water or lemon juice or orange juice. But I would almost make sort of a royal icing type of a thing, which is done with egg whites. And it gives it a really nice, stiff, thick frosting that you can either pipe out or spread onto the gingerbread men. So I've eaten about 5 million of these cookies and I'm about to give them all away. So get in the kitchen, make some cookies. That's all the questions that we had for today. So it's going to be a short day for us. But thanks for joining. Oh, wait, I had one more come in. Sorry. Can you use peppermint flavor instead of almond on the candy cane? You can. It's just I prefer almond, but you can use any type of an extract that you want to use. They also have vanilla in them as well. So this video, if you've missed it or want to share it with anybody, will be up on YouTube at Home with Joseph. It will also be on Aspire's website. And you can also follow me at Home with Joseph on Instagram if you're new to being on here this week. But thanks again for joining me, and we're going to see you next week. Christmas is coming up. And so I hope everybody has oh, I've got lots more questions coming in. Hang on. What is a good drink with the cookies? Well, hot chocolate is great with anything. But also, you know, I mean, I'm not really a milk drinker, but with the gingerbread, milk is really good. And even mulled cider is really good because you've got a lot of that spice in the apple and then a lot of the spice in the cookie. It really goes well with each other. Are your recipes posted on your Instagram? So the recipes are emailed out after every episode if you've registered for the videos. They are not posted on Instagram, but they are posted on my website at homewithjoseph.com. And there's a section that says recipes, and it has any of the ones from the videos, plus any of the other ones that I've put up there just in the course of making things and trying out recipes. So feel free to go to athomewithjoseph.com. And I believe they're all printable that are on the website. So you feel free to take any of the recipes and try them. And as always, if you have any questions, you can private message me on Instagram or Facebook or email me through the website. And I'm happy to answer any questions or help you guys through any of the recipes. So thanks so much, and we will see you next week.